Hello, 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 and welcome to Patchwork Stocking by the request of BFF Vanessa. So let me tell you what you're going to need for this project. Um, you're going to need a stocking pattern, okay, depending on what size stocking you're doing. And this, you can see, oh my gosh, how ratty and torn is this? This is my original stocking pattern from probably back in the 90s. Okay, I've made a bazillion stockings. I have other stocking patterns, but this is the first one I laid my hands on, so apparently it needed to rise again. So we're going to talk about what you need if you're going to do this stocking, and what you're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need some fabric, and you're going to need fabric for the front and the back of the stocking, the outer part, and then pieces for the lining, as well as this particular pattern we're going to use. We're going to make a binding, so you're going to need a piece of matching fabric, or complementary fabric, that is 2.5 inches wide and approximately 16 to 17 inches long. And you'll measure the circumference of your stocking once you've got it done to know exactly how long to make it. You'll also want a piece of fabric that can be a tab, and I usually cut mine about 6 inches, between 5 and 6 inches long. And you can always cut it longer and then make it shorter if you don't want the hanger that long. And as far as the width, think about how wide you want your hanger, your little tab for your hanger. How wide do you want that? Then double that and add a 1/2 inch, and that will give you how wide you need to cut this by, like I said, 5 to 6 inches long. So on this particular stocking, we are going to use patchwork. And so the question is, how do I do my patchwork? Well, this is what I did. I had a bunch of 2.5 inch strips from a jelly roll. And so what I did was I took 8 different fabrics and I sewed them together. I took half of the jelly roll, so that would be about 21 inches long. Just because that's what I decided to do. And I sewed 8 of them together, and obviously this has already been cut, but there were 8 of them, and I just sewed them all together. So I had strips of 8, and then I cut from this big long piece, I cut strips that were 2.5 inches wide. Okay, now you can use 2.5 inch squares if you'd like, and just sew a bunch of 2.5 inch squares together. You can do that. Or like I said, you can do strip piecing, which is what I did. So then what I did was I took, here's my first one, okay, and I decided this is what I wanted at the top of my stocking. So I started with this color, and there's my 8, and then I sewed it. I sewed another one, but every time I sew them together, I always take it down one. So here, this row is sewn. I guess I actually came back, I did it the other way. So you start here, and to this one, you would sew this set, and you would move it down one, and then sew this set and move it down one. And I, again, have already cut this, but I had 8 rows just like this. And every time I went down one, so it's like stair steps, okay? What you have to think about is this is a really weird shape. And so all of your rows don't need to be the same length. Now, I'm sure there's some mathematical formula that you could follow, and being a math person, you'd think I'd come up with it, but I didn't. I always wing it. What I've done, after I sewed those 8 rows together of my 8 fabrics, I then decided, okay, here's my top. And again, this has already been cut off. But I take my pattern and I put it at the top there, okay? Put it at the top, and then I see if what I have down here is wide enough at the bottom. Let me get a pen so I can hold that. Look at my cute pen. It's a little chick. Okay, so I'm going to pin this, and I'll show you how I pinned it. Just a second. Okay. So I just pinned it up here at the top. This is going to be the top of my stocking. Okay, so this is now going to put these squares, now they'll be on point, which is what you said you wanted. So now, after I hold that up, I look and say, was it wide enough at the bottom? Well, I will tell you it was not. So what I ended up doing was I took off some of the excess from this side and I attached it to the bottom here. And so really what I've done with my patchwork is I have just finagled it and I've added squares or a few squares where I needed them to make it longer. So I'm going to take my pattern off again and I will just tell you at the longest point here, I have a row that has 10, it used 10 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is the longest row that I have. The one next to it is 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so you could do that incrementally. Then you come over to this side, and this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so you could do that. That would be another way to do this. Okay, so I don't really have, you know, a mathematical way for you to do it, but just know that if you're using this pattern, I needed 10 squares, 2.5 inches, and then, you know, 9 or 8 on the subsequent rows, so that it would be long enough at the longest point of my stocking from top to bottom. So from top to bottom. And because I'm trying to stand on my tippy toes so that I can get that whole thing in there. Okay, but once you have this piece done, and here's what it actually, my piece looks like. It's a weird shape, right? But you want to do like I did. Take your pattern and lay it on top of your fabric to make sure that it's wide enough at all sections of the stocking. Once you have decided that it is, you're going to pin this stocking pattern on top of your patchwork, which is what I'm doing right now. You can't see it, but that's really what I'm doing. I'm going to pin all the way around, which I'm not going to do for the sake of the time of the video. But I'm going to just go ahead and pin that and make sure that the top of your stocking is below the V's at the top. Okay, so when I turn this around, I should not be able to see any pattern, which I had to adjust because my pattern was actually sticking above here, and you don't want that because then you're going to have that part with a little V at the top of your stocking, which you don't want. Okay, but once you've done that, then I'm going to pin it, like I said, all the way around, and then I'm going to cut it out around the outside of this pattern. This is allowing 1/4 of an inch. So when I cut it out, my seam allowance will be there. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to take a scrap piece of batting, and I'm going to cut a piece of batting in the same direction as my the face of my stocking. I'll layer those two things together, and I'm going to quilt it. And for this, you know, this lends itself well to just doing, you know, crosshatch quilting on it, straight lines, which is what I'm going to do. Now, I generally do not make the back of my stocking the same as the front. I will have just a plain backing, okay? And this is a batik, so it's the same on both sides, but I will warn you that as you go to cut out your backing, when you get to the point of you're going to layer your front and your back together, here's the front. When you cut it out like this, don't forget when you do the back to do the reverse image. Okay, so flip your pattern over before you cut your backing. Otherwise, you'll have your back inside out, and we don't want that. So I am going to get my top quilted, and then I'll come back and we will talk about what to do after that. So be back in just a moment. Okay, I am back, and I wanted to show you real quick. I've trimmed out my stocking from my patchwork, and I've layered it on a piece of batting that I have not cut to size. I'm getting ready to go quilt this, but having this little bit around the stocking just makes the maneuvering of it under the needle that much easier to do. And then once I've finished the quilting, then I'll trim this down to size and it'll be ready to add to my backing piece. And so I'm going to go quilt this and I'll be back. Alrighty, I'm back. And I have quilted, done my crosshatch all the way around, and I've trimmed it. And notice that I did not get real precise on my batting being right up next to there because it's just going to go in the seam allowance. Now I'm going to take my backing fabric and I'm going to layer it on top of my stocking. And it's hard to do that in reverse. But I'm going to layer that and I'm going to stitch all the way around, obviously leaving the top open. And then I'll clip my curves very, you know, how you clip your curves, just like 1/8 of an inch in on the concave. That's what it is, concave, when it goes in, like it caves in, math term. Anyway, and so I'll do that all the way around all of my little concave places. I'll snip my curves. I will do the same thing with my lining fabrics. Again, both of these sets are going to be sewn right sides together. Both sets will have their clip in the curves on both of them, and then we'll be ready to put everything together. So I'll do that and be back. Alrighty, we are nearing the end. I have stitched my stocking together. I have clipped my curves on that. I've also stitched my lining pieces together, and you can see, can you see? Yes, you can see. That's where I've clipped my curves. So I did it there at the bottom and then right here along this curve. So I turned my stocking, the outer part, right side out. I'm going to leave my lining piece wrong side out, and then what I'm going to do is stuff this down into the stocking. And so I've got my hand in there, and I'm going to stuff that down into the toe of my stocking, like so. I'm going to push the heel in. And once I had got my stocking at the outer part prepared, I did press those seams so that they would lay nice and flat. And I've got my lining in to my stocking. And my seams, I tend to like to have my seams kiss each other. So I've got them pushed, I don't know if you can really see that, but you know, I've got them kissing where they're going in opposite directions, just, you know, to distribute some of that bulk. Another thing I went ahead and did was I took that piece for my tab, my hanger, and I used a 1/4 inch seam, which is what I also did on my stocking. I used a 1/4 of an inch when I was sewing. And I've gone ahead and turned this, but when I press this, I always make sure that I press the seam to the inside so that when I flip it, that seam then is on the inside and you don't see it. Okay, so now I've got all of these pieces done. What I'm going to do is I'll pin this, and then I'm going to stitch all the way around the top of that just to hold it in place. And when I'm doing that, before I'm going to attach my binding, I'm also going to take my hanger, and your stocking should hang in this manner. And so I want my hanger to be over here on this end of my stocking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it down. Flipping it down, and of course I'll have all of this nice and even before I stitch it. Yeah, let's see if I can do this. Yeah, so I have that right up even with the back of my stocking. Okay, so I guess I could do it like that. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to do like a basting stitch around the top, and I'll be catching that hanger in there, and then the last thing that we'll have to do is to sew a binding on, which is the same as sewing a binding on a quilt. So BFF, you know how to do that, and so I'm going to go ahead and say I'll see you later, and if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Okay, see you later, and Merry Christmas.